Hey guys, Robbie here for Quadratec.com. As you can see, the RSE Step Sliders are functioning beautifully. The whole family is definitely enjoying having these things on the Jeep. They're making getting in and out much easier. I know Emma's really enjoying them. Now, I gotta say, I'm really happy so far with how the Jeep is turning out. With the addition of the wheels and tires and suspension, and now the RSE Engineering Step Sliders, it just transforms the way the Gladiator looks. I think there's just something a little off about a stock Gladiator, but that's nothing a few aftermarket parts can't quickly and easily transform. Now, I am by no means done with my build. I've definitely got some more stuff that's gonna change up the look of my Jeep, and that's what we're gonna check out today. So if we take a look up front on the Jeep here, you can see I've already made a few small upgrades. I installed those Oracle Oculus 9-inch LED projector headlights a little while back, and they've made a huge improvement to my nighttime driving, making it much easier to see at night, and then with that really sharp cutoff, helps to prevent from blinding any oncoming traffic. I also swapped out the factory grille for the Mopar satin black grille, which I think helps to change up the look of the front end of the Jeep. And I went a step farther and I swapped over the headlight bezels and the grille inserts from the factory grille to the satin black grille. Out of the box, this grille is totally blacked out. And I thought that was just a little too dark for the front end, but moving these gunmetal headlight bezels and grille inserts over to the satin black grille, I think just sets it apart. Now today we're gonna be taking a look at the front bumper. Now, the Rubicon plastic bumper that comes from the factory is a perfectly fine looking bumper. In fact, I think Jeep did a great job designing this bumper. It looks really well, fits the Jeep really well, gives you some nice solid toe points. But let's face it, this plastic bumper can only provide so much protection when we're going off-road, and well, it doesn't have any place to mount a winch up here. And the fog lights could use a little bit of an upgrade as well. Why don't we go ahead and get the Jeep inside and get started. So as you can see, I chose the Poison Spyder Crawler Series front bumper for my Gladiator. This is their steel narrow width front bumper. Also added their lower skid plate. And while everything from Poison Spyder comes in their signature Spyder shell armor coat to keep it protected from rust and corrosion, well, I took it just a step farther and everything color matched in Sting Gray. Dropped it off at the body shop back when I dropped off the Rugged Ridge Amphib snorkel. I think it all came back looking absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to see how this looks installed on the Jeep. But before we get to bolting it up, well, we've got to get some fog lights installed in the bumper here. Like I mentioned outside, once I installed those new Oracle Oculus LED headlights in my Jeep, well, the factory fog lights, they just didn't measure up anymore. So I'm going to be swapping those in place a new set of Diode Dynamics SS3 Pro yellow SAE fog lights. Now, Diode Dynamics has their full line of SS3 pod lights with a number of cool features built in them. One of them being the availability of these direct bolt-in plug-and-play versions available for both Wrangler and Gladiator Sahara, Overland, and Rubicons with both plastic and steel bumper options. So as you can see, they do feature a round face, which makes them perfectly compatible with those factory bumpers. But in addition to that, well, it's also going to make it a perfect choice to fit right here in the fog light buckets of the Poison Spyder bumper. There are two kits available. The Type M kits feature this bracket that's been designed to match the plastic bumpers found on Wrangler Saharas and Rubicons, as well as Gladiator Overland and Rubicons. And then they also have the Type MR kits, which feature this additional bracket that bolts to the first one, which then makes them compatible with the steel bumpers found on some Wrangler and Gladiator Rubicons. They also include the plug-and-play wiring harnesses, two different style wiring harnesses, which means you can install them with no cutting of any of your factory wiring, makes them a direct plug-and-play light. And then they have two different power options for their SS3 lights. They have their Sport and their Pro level. Now, both of them feature very powerful light output. However, the Pro over doubles the total amount of lumens output over the Sport. So, of course, I had to go with the SS3 Pros. Now, with their SAE fog lights, they have three different beam pattern choices for you. They have their SAE driving style light, and that's going to be comparable to a high beam style output. So of course you're only going to want to use that when applicable, not when you have any oncoming traffic. Then they have their SAE fog light beam patterns available in both the white as well as the yellow like I have here. Now, the important fact about all three of those choices is that they are SAE compatible, meaning they meet all SAE and DOT regulations to be 100% legal for use when you're on the road. Now, that was important to me because I'm installing these in my front bumper here. I wanted to have a light that would supplement my headlight. And these yellow fog lights are going to do a great job at cutting through inclement weather, especially rain, sleet, snow, stuff like that. Of course, I can always add some additional lights to the front of my Jeep down the road for off-road only type use. Now, the white light output of the SS3 lights outputs at 6,000 K on the Kelvin color temperature scale, which is going to very closely match your factory LEDs as well as any aftermarket LED headlights. And then the yellow optics output at a much lower 3,000 K to give us that really crisp, bright yellow output. Now, of course, I'm not installing these in the factory bumper, and sometimes when you're combining two aftermarket parts, well, there's no way around it. You got to do a little bit of modification. And of course, that was the case here with the Poison Spyder bumper. This is designed for the factory fog lights. So in order to use this Type M bracket, one of the mounting holes lined up. However, I did have to go ahead and drill 3 additional mounting holes on the backside of the fog light buckets here on the bumper. Then I went ahead and tapped them as well, just to make it a little bit easier to install everything. I didn't have to worry about fumbling around with any nuts on the backside of the mounting surface. So with that all done and ready to go, at this point I can go ahead and get the fog lights installed in the bumper, and then we can move on to getting that factory bumper off the front of the Jeep. The lower skid plate's held in place with 4 15mm bolts, and then the bumper is held in place with 8 18mm nuts. Once I have all that out, the next thing I have to do is go ahead and remove a lot of these plastic clips from the backside of the factory bumper so that I can get access to the factory fog light wiring harness. Once we have the wiring harness out, at this point we can put the bumper back together if you're going to sell it or save it, or just throw it in the trash if you're done with it. Now, with the factory wiring harness out of that bumper, I've actually decided I'm not going to be reusing it. In my opinion, this harness is just way too long for this bumper. And when I can, I try to avoid having a rat's nest of wiring coiled up and zip tied in places in my Jeep, just to avoid any potential problems down the line. Not only can a coiled up harness start collecting dirt and mud and things, but zip ties can fail, wire harnesses can fall, get snagged, get ripped out. So Diode Dynamics does include those plug and play wire adapters that plug into the factory connection and then plug into their SS3 lights. That makes for a very easy install if you're installing them in a factory bumper. But since I'm not installing them in a factory bumper, well, I really don't need to use the factory harness. So I went ahead and I cut off the factory connection at the frame rail. And that's going to allow me to keep my quick disconnect there in case I ever need to remove the whole bumper. I don't have to reach up and unplug each individual fog light. I can simply unplug the connection just like it was from the factory at the frame rail. And then I got one of our Quadratec 2-circuit auxiliary light harnesses, and I cut everything out of that as well. So I'm not going to be reusing the relay or the switch leads. I just needed the light connections with those Deutsch style connectors and the wiring. I'm going to go ahead and get this routed behind the bumper how I like it. Get all the wiring spliced together, tape up the harness so it looks really nice and factory. Then I can move on to installing the lower skid plate on the bumper. And of course, my bumper install would not be complete without a winch, so that's up next. Man, lifting that winch up here onto the table and onto the bumper all by myself was definitely not an easy task, but I guess that's the times, right? Can you guys guess which winch I picked for the front of my Gladiator? Let me get the bumper installed on the front of the Jeep and I'll show you. What do you guys think? That went on pretty easy. So as you can see, I went with Warren's ZEON 10S Platinum for the front of my Gladiator here. And this is one of Warren's top of the line flagship winches with a ton of really cool features packed into it. For starters, it features their advanced wireless remote control that gives me wireless control not only of winching in and winching out, but it also gives me control of the clutch. That's right, there's no more manual clutch lever on top of the winch here. It's totally wirelessly controlled. So that means I can put it into free spool, pull my winch line out, hook it up to my anchor point, and then right from the remote, re-engage that clutch and start winching. I don't have to walk all the way back to the Jeep. That's a really, really nice feature. Now, in addition to that, I've also got some feedback here on the remote of the vehicle's battery status. I can also see temperature status of the winch, which is definitely going to come in handy during those really extreme line pulls. Now, Warren just didn't stop there. I've also got 2 ports right here on the back side of the winch for some auxiliary lighting. So I can plug in 2 sets of auxiliary lights that I can also control right here from the wireless remote. That's definitely going to come in handy for those nighttime trail rides. Now, in addition to the wireless remote, Warren is also using their all-new high-speed motor in their ZEON Platinum winches that features up to 20% faster line speed, as well as best-in-class efficiency and Warren's highest durability rating. It also features an IP68 waterproof rating, so you know this thing is going to stand up to just about anything you can throw at it. It also features 100 feet of their 3/8-inch Spyder winch line. And best of all, Warren is designed, engineered, and manufactured right here in the USA in Clackamas, Oregon. Now, sitting below the winch, of course, is another part that's made in the USA. Poison Spyder is out of Banning, California. And the reason that I chose to go with their Crawler Series winch bumper here, first and foremost, was I was looking for a top mount winch bumper. So I really like when we have the winch sitting on top of the bumper, not buried down inside of it. It gives me great ease of access to the winch drum. You can see how the line is spooling during a recovery. You can make adjustments if you need to. It's also very easy to keep clean, especially here on the East Coast when we get a lot of leaves and pine needles and stuff falling in the fall. Snow in the winter, mud and everything when we're out on the trails. And I've had some bumpers with the winch recessed down in the bumper, and in my opinion, they just start to collect a lot of stuff. Not necessarily a big deal, it's just one more thing that you've got to clean out and take care of. So I really wanted to go with a top mount winch bumper for my Gladiator, and I think it just overall looks really clean. You see nice, clean, smooth lines on top of the bumper there. Of course, this is a stubby, narrow width bumper. It's going to give me great aggressive approach angles when we're out on the trails. I also really like Poison Spyder's nice large radius curves they're using on the outside of the bumpers. And then I was also looking for a bumper that incorporated some fog lights. As I mentioned a little while ago, I like having a fog light to supplement my headlight, so I really wanted a bumper that had some integrated fog lights right in it, not one that I'd have to mount them up on the hoop or somewhere else. I really like that integrated look. And then finally, I really like that it incorporates this lower skid plate to give some protection to the front Rubicon disconnecting sway bar motor. Now, speaking of some products that are made in the USA, well, to continue with that theme, those Diode dynamic fog lights that I installed in the bumper, they're made in St. Louis, Missouri. And if I take a look at some of the other parts that I've already installed on the Jeep, well, Rock Crawler Suspension is out of New York State. Nitto is manufacturing their tires at a state-of-the-art facility down in Georgia, and Rockslide Engineering is producing their products out of Utah. Whenever I can, I love to put parts that are made in the USA on my Jeep, support American companies where we can. Now, with that being said, there is one last thing we have to do to finish up the job today, and that's to get the new winch line spooled onto the bumper, as well as getting the Fairlead installed. Warren does include this nice polished aluminum Fairlead to go with their ZEON Platinum winch, but I do have one more made in America part to install. So let's get the winch line on so I can show you what that is. well, with the winch rope almost all the way spooled on, of course I'm gonna have to go outside and re-spool this winch under some tension, but for now, at least I've got the rope spooled onto the drum and we can move on to getting our Fairlead installed. Now, as I mentioned, I'm not gonna be installing that worn Fairlead. I actually have one more American-made part we're gonna be installing, and that is the Factor55 Hawse Fairlead. These are CNC machined from aluminum. They are available in 1 inch or 1.5 inch thick. This is the 1 inch thick version. They feature a nice large radius, which is gonna aid in that winch rope sliding across it, especially when we're at more extreme angles. In addition to that, the opening on the Factor55 Fairlead is slightly larger than standard. If we compare it to the worn Fairlead, we can see that the opening is just a bit larger, and that's also gonna help with those high angle pulls and allow some larger thimbles to pass through this opening. Now finally, this Factor55 Fairlead features a Type 3 gunmetal gray hard anodized coating. Now that's different than a Type 2 anodized coating that would be for cosmetic purposes or even a powder coat finish. This Type 3 hard anodized finish is extremely durable, and that's gonna help stand up to any abrasion caused by even a dirty winch rope that's sliding across this Fairlead, even at some pretty extreme angles. So we can go ahead, pass our winch rope through the Fairlead and get this bolted up. Now with that Fairlead installed, the last thing we have to do is put a hook on the winch line. Of course, we can't go with any old winch hook with everything looking as good as it does. Well, we have to finish that off with a Factor55 UltraHook. Now this is an industry first that combines a closed system shackle mount into a winch hook, giving you the best of both worlds, in my opinion, to handle just about any recovery scenario I'm gonna find myself in. Of course, a closed system winch setup is going to be the safest setup that you can have, using a soft shackle or a hard bow shackle through this closed system shackle mount here, secured to a winch strap on your anchor point, whether that be a vehicle, a tree, or something, is going to give you the highest chance of keeping that intact and that not failing during your winch recovery. Now, there are some instances where you do need a hook, whether maybe you're trying to hook up to something very quickly, or maybe you're going to be doing a repetitive pull. You're hooking up, winching, changing the anchor point over and over. Using a hook could give you a nice quick way to attach and release your anchor point instead of attaching that shackle every time you need to move your anchor point. Now, Factor55 takes that a step farther and incorporates some nice safety features even into the hook mechanism with this little latching pin that's included right there. If you insert that here, once the latch is closed, that's going to prevent any accidental opening of the latch on the hook. One other thing I really like here is the finger grips that are even molded right here into the hook. Helps ensure that you're hooking it up in the proper orientation. Of course, you don't want to hook a winch hook from the top down, because if this should ever fail and something goes wrong during your recovery operation, well, the winch hook could fly into the air, causing a potentially dangerous situation. So you always want to hook a winch hook up from the bottom up, and having these finger grips molded right in here encourages you to make that connection in the proper way. I really like that Factor55 has put a ton of thought and design into their UltraHook. Of course, it features this great red finish. It's available in a variety of different colors that you can choose to match or accent your Jeep. And to get this installed here on the winch line, we'll just need a pair of snap ring pliers and pull this little snap ring out from inside. Drop the pin out, reinsert the pin through the thimble eye, and then reinstall the snap ring. Of course, you just want to make sure that that snap ring's properly seated all the way down in there, and then we can go ahead and finish winching this line all the way in. And then we've got these nice rubber pads right here on the UltraHook that are going to rest right against the Fairlead. And And when that's pulled nice and tight, you're not gonna have to worry about that rattling around or moving around on you when you're driving down the road. Two fantastic parts, again, to finish off the front of my Jeep here with everything being American made. Not only looks great, but it's gonna perform absolutely great no matter what situation I could throw at this bumper, the winch, or weather conditions with those new fog lights down below. Let me know what you guys think of everything I installed on the front of my Gladiator today, or if you have any questions, of course, you can always leave those for us down in the comment section below. I'll be sure to get back to you. At this point, with my LED headlights installed and now LED fog lights, well, I think next time I'm going to have to do something to address those old halogen DRL and turn signals out there on my fenders. So if you haven't already, do me a favor, guys, make sure you hit that subscribe button so be sure to catch the rest of the buildup of my Gladiator as well as plenty more. Till then, I'm Rob. I'll see you guys out on the trail.